It is another round of rookie talk here with myself and Ryan McDaniel from the Views from the 573. Be sure to check his stuff out. I've got all those links down below for you to go check out more and more of Ryan's work. And for now, enjoy the show. Now let's talk about kind of the rest of the wide receivers. And this is where we can have a lot of fun on guys where these guys, I think a couple of them are still going to be round 2 picks. These may be more your round 3, even round 4 guys who could pop, though. And wide receiver, like this class is just so deep, though. Like those first 7 we talked about would all probably be the wide receiver 1 a year ago. Maybe 2 behind JSN. But they would have been like in that range for sure. And I think a lot of these guys would have been hanging out in that Quentin Johnston, Jordan Addison, Zay Flowers range a year ago. But these are round 2 guys for the 2024 NFL draft. So let's start out with A.D. Mitchell, Adonai Mitchell. He was Xavier Worthy's teammate at Texas. Athletic freak kind of guy, Ryan. How do you feel about A.D. Mitchell?
A guy that can make big-time catches in big-time situations. I saw him do it time and time again in Georgia. Then he goes to Texas, and he does it a couple times there. And it's just a guy that's another kind of guy that is a big – he's got that size-speed combo, kind of like Brian Thomas does. Great athlete. I do wonder, where I think landing spot will be important for him and where he goes. I do think he will be good at the next level. I think both these Texas receivers will be solid at the next level. I think they're both going to be good. I don't think there's any. I won't say there's any bust potential there because there's always bust potential with all these guys. But I feel like those two. I feel like those two are guys that I feel like are going to have some success at the next level. And I feel like if he lands in Buffalo or something like that, then that can really help out. Give Josh Allen somebody out wide that's big, fast, and that if you need a touchdown late, you can throw it to him because he's done it time and time before, and he did it in the national championship game. And I don't think you can ignore that type of big playability in that big environment. He's not afraid of the moment.
Ryan, you mentioned everyone's a bust, right? Like everyone can be a bust, right? That's a hard lesson I learned very quickly. I remember the first NFL draft where I really started to dig deep in things. It was the 2009 draft, right? Matthew Stafford going first overall. One of the first ever NFL draft articles I read that was a mock draft, right? And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Like going through all this analysis, all these guys. And gosh, I can't remember for the life of me what side I was on. It's probably either NFL Net or NFL.com or Fox Sports. And they said Aaron Curry is the safest prospect in this draft. Aaron Curry ended up playing for 3 years. He recorded 5 sacks. I actually pulled up his page just to see how few years he actually played. So I learned that lesson because I remember then telling my friends, my 3 friends who were that into football in 2009, were freshmen in high school. Or I guess it was 8th grade, actually, like the spring of it. No, that would have been freshman year. Of man, Aaron Curry, he's gonna be really good. Like no matter what, he's a can't miss guy. Because we were in St. Louis, right? So we're Rams fans, and we all also had our other team, but we're all also following the Rams. And I'm like, Rams should take Aaron Curry. Aaron Curry, can't miss guy. You just want, you take good player there, you get Aaron Curry. Yeah. So I learned very young that every player can be a bust. And so, yeah, these guys are definitely no different from that. Let's talk about a couple other guys here who are, I think, very similar to A.D. Mitchell. And I'm having a hard time picking one from the other. Let's talk about Xavier Legette here. He's kind of an interesting one because he did nothing for 8 years, and then all of a sudden he just had this one massive blow up year, and kind of catapulted himself into this range. And then I'm going to double barrel you here. We're going to talk about him, and we're going to talk about Keon Coleman, because I think those 2 guys and A.D. Mitchell, all 3 of them, really similar body type, really similar play style. Do you have any differentiation on these guys, or is it just going to kind of be a let's see what the NFL thinks about them, and let's see where they get drafted and who drafts them?
More so on the latter part of that. Let's just see where these guys draft them. But if I had to pick one, I probably lean towards Mitchell. Out of those three guys, I think I mentioned Coleman as one of those guys that I'm really kind of not feeling. In college during the season, he was rising up draft boards, and I saw him in the first round, and it just seems like it's kind of cooled off on him. And I
Real
feel like
slow
there's
40.
probably some, yes, a slow 40. I kind of felt like I'm getting Quentin Johnson vibes off
Ew.
of him, and I'm just kind of like, I don't know if I like it. Xavier Legette, I'm kind of was like, well, I did a game of 20 questions and I couldn't put 21 because I don't know how I feel about this guy. But Xavier Legette was one of those guys that I don't know how to feel about. I've heard mention of they're, kind of like DK Metcalf in a way, kind of built like him. And I mean, yeah, he just only had that 1 year of production. And I won't forget this, but when South Carolina rolled into Knoxville, he didn't really have a big game against that Tennessee defense, and they pretty much took him away. And so that's something that I remember from last year. But yeah, I mean, out of those three guys, I like Mitchell more. I would probably put like Get number two and Coleman three. But again, I think it's just a matter of where these guys land is going to be of the utmost importance. I mean, for all these guys, that is. But I think these three guys you can pencil in as like, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think these three guys, all of them, we'll see what the depth chart in front of them looks like and who gets opportunities. That's really going to be what deciphers it for these guys. I think they're all similar prospects. I actually think Coleman, I am so bipolar on Keon Coleman. Some days I wake up and I go, he's a slug. He should just move to tight end and maybe he can be Darren Waller 2.0. But there's other times where I look at the way he ran that gauntlet and I look at him playing in college football and I go, man, this guy could be like an overpowering outside wide receiver. Like the name that first comes to my mind, it's not good because it didn't work out, but like he had a great rookie year. Kelvin Benjamin kind of comes to mind a little bit for him, which again, there's good and there's bad there, right? Like Kelvin was out of the league in 4 years, but he did have a massive rookie year. I thought there was something there with Kelvin. It kind of reminds me a little bit of that, where there may be some give and take. This is a style of wide receiver. And again, Ryan, that's something me and you've been talking NFL draft for 7 years. These big receivers have not quite hit as often. They have not quite been as safe recently as they once were. Maybe that's just because of who the players were. Maybe that's because of the way the league is played these days. Less contact, less physicality from defensive backs means smaller guys can get open now. And so maybe that helps the smaller guys to really outshine the big guys who had to win contested catches because contested catches were all there ever were in the 2000s.
Yeah.
But those three guys, Keon Coleman, A.D. Mitchell, Xavier Legette, three guys I'm lukewarm but interested on. Let's go to a guy who I actually prefer over all three of them here. And that's my guy here. So I love me some Ladd McConkey. If you want diet Ladd McConkey, let me give you a Ricky Pearsall. Is that pretty good analysis right there?
Yeah, pretty Ricky right here. I'll tell you what, Matt, just kind of taking a look at it, I think there's a reason why you might like him. And I think he was back then. He played at Herm State.
Oh man. Okay, so we go back here. That's podcast lore here of Herm Edwards and Arizona State. Herm State, the fighting Herms out there at Arizona State. Okay. That checks the list. I like Jaden Daniels a lot too. So this makes a lot of sense, Ryan. Everything's really coming full circle.
Herm is the one to bring this all together. Of course he is.
I mean, Ricky comes across as a guy who plays to win the game.
Yeah, he does. I can see it why Herm is like, yeah, we're going to bring you on, kid.
In all seriousness, though, he's more of that slot guy than what we talked about Ladd McConkey, where Ladd can play outside. I think Ricky seems like he's more of a pure slot. Is that right?
Yeah, I feel like he kind of fits that mold. He is a little bit bigger than Ladd at 6'1", but I feel like he can be that guy that you take a look at and is like, he is super reliable in the slot. And listen, the NFL loves those guys. Those guys are super reliable in the slot. You know they're going to be there. You know they're going to be open, and they know how to get open. And Ricky is one of those guys. I mean, the one thing I remember from his season last year is just making a catch where it's like, he looks like the Jordan logo. And it's just like, that's ridiculous. And there's like 2 or 3 guys around him. He gets rocked, and it's just like, okay, fine. Let's it's first down to us, so let's go.
He is, and he's a guy who, Ryan, like, I'm gonna ask you a ridiculous question later on, so just prepare yourself for that already. Where I'm gonna ask you who is this year's Puka Nacua? Like, just get ready for that. I'm gonna ask you that question because I feel like as the host of this podcast, I have to. So we'll get to that. But one thing that Puka had going for him is that he landed into a landing spot with immediate opportunity that fit his playing style. With the Cooper Kupp injury, he was immediately able to fit into that. I think Ricky Pearsall is a guy who, if he can land into a team who has used that slot receiver in a role before and doesn't currently have their guy, I think he's a guy who can make a difference in year one. Specific team that comes to mind for me is the Cincinnati Bengals, right? You've had Tyler Boyd there for the last 18 years. Tyler Boyd's a free agent, still is out there. Nobody wants him, apparently. If if Ricky Pearsall or Lad McConkey, but if Ricky Pearsall landed in Cincinnati and he could just fill into that Tyler Boyd role, I think there's immediate relevance there. He would be the 3 in the offense. Target share wouldn't be great, but he could immediately get on the field, and who knows what can happen for the rest of his career. That's the kind of thing I'm going to need to see out of a landing spot for Ricky Pearsall. If he goes to a team that already has those slot guys, if he goes to a Jacksonville where Christian Kirk plays out of the slot all the time, if he goes to whatever team ends up with Michael Thomas, right? If he goes to the Rams, I'm going to hate it because I feel like he's going to be standing in line waiting for his opportunity in that role. But if he can land somewhere, if he goes to the Giants, then just forget about it because he's one of 18 short guys, right? But if he can land somewhere where he gets to kind of be that reliable set of hands and kind of work the slot, I could see Aaron Rodgers loving him, right? Like, even though Aaron Rodgers hates rookies, I could see Aaron Rodgers loving him. So he's a guy who's gonna need a good landing spot, but kind of like what we talked about in the running back episode, where Bucky Irving kind of needs a specific role landing spot. I think Ricky Pearsall is in that same category where he needs a specific role for his landing spot.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think he needs a specific landing spot that fits and that's tailored to what he can do and what he can bring to an offense. I love the Cincinnati, bringing them up. I love that kind of fit there. I'm trying to think of other teams that could need a slot. I mean, my Titans could need a slot receiver. I don't know how sold they are on Traylon Burks. Maybe Ricky's a guy later on that they could take. So I don't know. I definitely am with you that it does depend on where Ricky lands. And if he lands somewhere like the Rams, it's just like, well, it's not worth my time. I know what's going to happen. But if it's Cincinnati, it's like, I still know what's going to happen, but I know the role that he's going to be fit in is going to be good for him. And it's just, he's going to thrive in it because he was really productive at Florida. Despite the quarterback situations that they've had there, going from Richardson one year to Graham Mertz the next. So, yeah, I feel like, it depends on where he lands and what team can utilize his skill set.
So I've got 2 more names I'm going to throw your way here, and I'm going to let you pick on any wild cards we haven't touched on, right? The first name I want to throw your way here is Roman Wilson. Kind of the wide receiver equivalent of JJ McCarthy, right? It's the other side of that same Pokemon card where you didn't play a whole lot of like big time role because we ran the ball with Blake Corley 500 times last year. Is there something there with Roman Wilson and we just didn't get a chance to see it because of what the offense is?
I think so. I feel like there's something there. He does have some speed to him. He ran a 4.39. And he did catch 12 touchdown passes last year. And it is a guy that does not have a lot of drops. And so I feel like your NFL team's like, okay, we see the size here, but he's a solid athlete, doesn't drop the ball a whole lot. and is a guy that I feel like can make the play, can make some big time plays. He's got good hands, and he's really uber competitive. I feel like you have to if you're a part of that Michigan team. You got to be really competitive, and I feel like he's going to be a guy that's going to pester some defenses, and he did that a couple times at Michigan. But I feel like at the next level, he'll be a little bit better than he was at Michigan. I feel like he can pester some defenses and just make life trouble for him. Kind of like Ladd, kind of like Pearsall. I feel like he can do that.
Who do you prefer between Ricky Pearsall and Roman Wilson?
I think I would just take Ricky because I've seen him play more and I've seen him go off on SEC teams. I'm pretty sure he went off against UT one year or the other. So, you got to have a pretty good memory if you can remember Ricky torching your team, in one of those 2 years. But I think Ricky, yeah.
I almost just called him Roman Reigns. So that's a good sign. If he becomes the head of the NFL table, then maybe he'll be really, really good for about 4 years. I've got one more guy I want to ask you about. So, Ryan, earlier I threw out a scenario where I would just lose all of my bananas, where if Ladd McConkey was drafted to the 49ers and the 49ers traded away Brandon Ayuk, I would lose my bananas, right? I'd be so happy, over the moon, right? Let me throw out another one for you here. Instead of trading away Brandon Ayuk, they extend Brandon Ayuk. 4 more years of Brandon Ayuk, right? Yay, 49ers. But they can't pay both of these guys. So therefore, they traded away Deebo Samuel. And now they drafted Malachi Corley. Baby Deebo comes in to replace Deebo, Ryan. Do all my bananas go away again?
No, I see the Debo stuff with Corley. That's somebody I'm kind of high on because of that aspect that he can bring. I feel like in a Shanahan type of offense that knows how Debo can work, I feel like oh yeah, we want kind of our version of Debo. Even if he's Debo light, we still want to have that aspect to our offense because it can bring a really good aspect. It can really open up the offense if you have somebody like Debo that brings those characteristics to your offense.
I'm going to need to do some homework because obviously we all know off the top of our head, like Mike McDonald, right? He was coaching under Shanahan, right? Bobby Slowick, right? The offensive coordinator for the Houston Texans. He was coaching under Kyle Shanahan, right? Like we know those ones off the top of our head. I'm going to have to do some homework before the NFL draft. I want to make myself a composite list of the Kyle Shanahan coaching tree and where those guys are currently at. Because I can almost guarantee, I would almost bet my whole DraftKings account, the whole $9.50 is still in that thing, that a coach who has coached Deebo Samuel in the NFL will draft Malachi Corley. And assuming that happens, I'm going to be kind of in on Malachi Corley. Like, there are obviously weaknesses in his game. He's not an all-around player. He's not Ladd McConkey. He's not Rome Odunze. He's not Malik Neighbors. He's not those guys. If you're looking for a true bona fide number one wide receiver, you're going to go somewhere else for that, right? If you need size, go draft John Coleman instead. But if you are looking to fill a role, if you want to have a Deebo Samuel style role in your offense or a Curtis Samuel style role in your offense, that's who you should draft then. You should draft Malachi Corley. You have to draft him knowing what you want to do with him. And so there are certain coaches out there who I'll be really excited for if they can, if they get their hands on this guy.
Oh yeah, for sure. The Texans would probably be one if they didn't just get Stephon Diggs.
That room is so full.
Yeah.
Ryan, are there any other wide receivers out here that you would like to touch on that we have not touched on?
Well, I mean, we got a guy from SEMO.
We do have a guy from SEMO. So this is basically my way of asking you who is this year's Puka Nacua, because we've talked about all the big names here. So this is basically my way of saying, well, Ryan, who's this year's Puka Nacua? And you just gave me a guy from SEMO, Southeast Missouri State, Ryan Flournoy, as the answer for who's this year's Puka Nacua. I'm so happy.
Well, hey, listen, he's got a good first name. I'll give him that. So I'll give him that. I think he has a good chance to succeed with that type of name. There's been, not football Ryans that I can't think of off the top of my head, but there's
Ryan
been some.
Ryan Matthews,
Yeah,
Matt Ryan.
sure.
I am blanking on good Ryans in the NFL, Ryan. This is not a good sign.
No, it's not. It's not.
But Ryan Flournoy, let's talk about him in all seriousness here, though. He does seem like a really fun prospect. I think I only caught some of one SEMO game this past year, and but he definitely stands out, though. I mean, he's a legit draft prospect from our alma mater, Southeast Missouri State.
Yeah, well, I think of Tennessee as more my alma mater, but that's neither here or there. You know,
You didn't
but
actually go to school there.
although there's some alternate version of me that is glad they went to Tennessee, but yeah, uh, um, he's the 6-year senior, so and he's almost 25. He's going to be 25 here in a few months, so that's something to keep an eye on. I mean, the clock is ticking there. I know wide receiver is there's a different shelf life there than is running back, but it's something to keep an eye on. But yeah, he's had an impressive draft process, ran a good 40 time, done really well for himself. And just looking at what Brugler has for him, it gives him a 6th round grade. So I could see that being a possibility for him. I think if I had to pick a guy, I don't know why, but my eyes immediately went to Luke McCaffrey just
Sure.
because I like you could automatically see it with that family, this how successful they are. And I also think Javon Baker, he might rise a little bit. I think there's rumors of him rising, but as a guy that has had a good draft process as well and could find himself taking a 3rd round. So not necessarily a Puka guy, but I feel like a guy that's one of the lower tier receivers that's somebody to keep an eye on. But yeah, I don't know how I feel about Flournoy. I know I just butchered the name of the guy that went to SEMO, but yeah, I think like he can possibly be a Puka Nakua. It's just a matter of landing in the right spot.
It is. And no one is likely to be a Puka Nakua, but there will be some guys late who do emerge as like useful players, right? Like, even if it's like a Gabe Davis outcome, right? Like, that's just always like my go-to brain for a lot of things is Gabe Davis. He's just always on my mind, apparently. But a late round pick who earns a role, right? And even if it's one of those deals, like I remember a few years ago in Dynasty where Gabe Davis was a free agent, and I just saw him playing more and more in Buffalo, right? His rookie year, I picked him up, and then a year or 2 years later, he became like a flex option for me. That's what some of these late round guys are going to be. Tez Walker is kind of my own personal one of those guys where it's like I think Tez Walker could be a thing. I don't think he is great by any means, but I think he's got speed in the right situation. Right opportunity comes along, there could be something there. Johnny Wilson is one last name I just want to mention. A hulk of a dude. Just a big dude at wide receiver. He just towers over everybody. So there could be something there that could be fun. But probably not but me. So once again, that was myself and Ryan McDaniel from the Views from the 573 podcast. Ryan did a 20 burning questions podcast just the other day on his Views from the 573 podcast. He talks quite a bit about this wide receiver class in that episode. So be sure to check out that one. The link is in the description.